So I'm all done stitching up on the small holster, and I've wet it down. It's not super duper wet, but it's pretty wet. This is the Hellcat, and I did verify too that the 365 will fit right in here too. But I started out with this one being for the Hellcat. That's what we're making it for. Now I try to keep everything even. As long as you keep it even, it could be a left or right-handed holster. It just doesn't matter. It just depends on which side. Once you wear it a few times, it'll start forming to whichever side you favor with it. So, really all I need to do is insert the firearm and let it sit that way. But I like to get a little more definition into it. So I like to use the round end of my this tool, burnishing tool. You can grab this tool, works too. So that kind of just forms nice around the top there. In the end, it all comes down to how much definition you want to put into it. I don't always put a lot in it, but once you've got it, you've got it. I like to also kind of just try to flare this out a little bit at the top. Not that it'll necessarily stay that way, but it does help to get that and it's not much. It's just a little bit of a flare, and I pretty much do that on all my holsters. This one's just flared just a little bit. Just makes reholstering a little easier, but that's all there is to this. Like I said, it fits the P365 as well. Slides right in. The forming, it could be a little different for it. It's not really going to make that much difference, but here we go. I'm just going to set this aside, let it sit, let it dry overnight. We'll come back in the morning. Now we need to form this one. I've got to soak it down good. It doesn't have to be super duper wet, but remember we've got 4 layers, so I need to kind of get some inside too. The main area you need wet is this area here. Not so much on the outsides, but get those wet too, because the moisture will change the color of the leather a bit. And we'll let that sit. We'll douse it again. I usually like it pretty wet when I do this, especially if I'm like on a pancake holster or something, that's only going to fit one gun. Those I like to get them good and wet, get a really good form on them. This one formed really nice too, around the ejection port and stuff, formed good. So pretty happy with that. But I want the water to get in there a little bit, soak it in. I'll usually put this in a pan of water or something. I don't usually use a spray bottle to do it, but that's what I got. Usually run in the house, run it under some warm water, and that's how I get her ready to go. Should be pretty good there. You'll notice it's pretty flexible once it's good and wet. Let me slide the gun in. All the way down to where you want it. This is one of my favorite tools for forming because it just works. Go up along the front here. Make sure you're centered in there. Remember, this holster can be worn left or right-handed at this point. So this is just another purpose of this tool. It's not just for forming, it's not just for burnishing. Going right along the edge of that trigger guard. So the main places I think you need to form is around the trigger guard. Really, this has a safety in the back. I'm not going to get carried away with that, or the slide release, excuse me. Now you can use, there's other ways to do forming. There's vacuum forming. I'm not going to spend the money on a vacuum pump for the few holsters that I do in a year. Just isn't cost effective. you can use a press. I do have a 6-ton press right over to my left here. So I could use that if I wanted to, with some foam, heavy duty foam, and just put it in the press, squish it all together, and it would form for me. I've done that before. It works out pretty well. Now I want to roll this top edge just a little bit. Make sure that I'm not rolling it a lot. You know, like on a revolver holster, I kind of flare it just a little bit more, and that's just because you got that cylinder that's going to be going in there too. So I kind of flare it a little bit more, a little wider, so that the gun goes in there nice. Alright, so I like where this is at. Like I said, you don't have to do a lot of forming on it. I will let this sit, work on something else for an hour or so, come back and just kind of run over everything again. That's really all there is to it. When you start wearing it, these wings will bend over to whatever you need. That will help in retention and everything else. So I'm not going to worry about that. That keeps this a left or right-handed holster. So it can be worn on the left side, worn on the right side. Either way you want to go. But that's where I'm going to leave it. Let it sit for a couple hours, hour at least, and then come back and just kind of make sure all my forming is I'm comfortable with where everything is at. If I need to change anything, I can wet it down again and change it. But there we go. So I will be back when I check it. Alright, so it's been more than a couple days. It's a holiday season, you know, we got places to go, people to see, and all that kind of stuff. Since we moved into a smaller house, we don't have Christmas at our house anymore. So here's the final holster with the CZ75. Fits great. You can feel a little bit of resistance. This one doesn't pop in there like the Hellcat did, but that's okay. It's still retained in there just fine. So the next step is just oil it. So I just use Fiebing's Neat Foot oil. I keep a little rag here to apply it. I do want to try to get some inside. Mostly because it's just raw leather inside too. You can use a dauber to apply this as well. I just keep a piece of sweatshirt on there. Neat's foot oil isn't going to hurt you. So, you know, if you're phobic about gloves and stuff, it's not going to hurt me, so I don't care. And there you can see again around the belt loop there. That's from that Toco Pro. It's just what it does. After the oil is dry, and I'll show you this other holster too, that was oiled and is all rested. And I'll be putting another coat on that here in a minute. Do keep a rag handy. So that's after it's been oiled. It doesn't have those light spots. It's still got the burnishing marks from when I burnished it in. But other than that, it looks great. I don't know how well you can see the inside. The inside looks good. Yeah. There's a couple of spots where my stitching got really, really close to the edge. I don't like doing that. It can be so difficult to get your stitching right, and that's why I've gone to using the machine on it. Because as long as it's glued together and I follow my stitch line, that machine is going to put that needle straight in and straight out every time. So that's why I do it on a machine, but you certainly don't need one. And I've done these for years before I got the machine, so it can be done. I like to use a drill. I've got a small drill press, a little hobby drill press, and you just drill your holes instead of punching them. And that seems to work pretty well for me. But there you go. That's the small one. It's all done. If you have a Hellcat or a CZ75B and you'd like a holster, a slide holster like this, give me a call. Well, not a call. There's an email address down in the description. You can email me. And you might just wind up with a free holster. So let's get another coat of oil on here. I'm pretty generous with it here. Now, I always, whenever I oil something like this, since I am pretty generous with it, I'll let it sit overnight, at least, before I tan coat. I decided I'm going to apply it with a dauber. So I took a lighter to it to get anything that might be loose out of it. Doesn't always get everything, but hopefully it increases my odds here. You can use a cloth too. Just kind of felt like doing a dauber. I'm only going to tan coat the outside of this one because the inside is just natural flesh side of the leather. Well, today, for some reason, I'm getting some streakiness. Let's try the cloth method here. Sometimes it can be dependent. The temperature in here is a little on the chilly side, but it's not really too bad. But with the cloth, I can work it in a little bit. And if I do 2 or 3 coats, it works out pretty well. Well, I ain't gonna make you watch, but it sure looks a lot better here than it does over here. So see if I can kind of doctor some of this up a little bit. And I'll be back. Alright folks, got the 2 holsters done. The one for the full-size CZ75 and the one for the Springfield Hellcat. Both turned out great. I like how you can see the burnished lines in there, burnishing marks. I think that's cool. Maybe that's just me, I don't know. But I like that. The Hellcat one already has a home. If you know somebody that can make good use of one for a CZ75, I'd be happy to send it out. But there you go. They're pretty simple. This one is, the leather was 3.5 tall, 7.5 long. I'm not going to put a pattern out. These are just too easy for that. I made my stitch lines with the firearm, cut my belt slots, lopped off these bottom corners because I don't need them. But you do need some space here to kind of just contain things. 3.5 inches seems to work pretty good for this one. The smaller one, I left it a little rounded here, so it is 3.5 here. It's only 3 inches here on this part. So you could cut it 3 by, oh, I gotta see. Lay it here in the bench once. Three and a half by, looks like 6 3/4. So 3.5 tall, and that's with the rounded part, or so 3 inches without that, by 6 3/4 long. Yeah. So I'll put the measurements down below, and same thing. I just kind of used the firearm to make my stitch lines where I needed them, and I think I showed all that in pattern making. But you use the gun and just kind of make sure you leave some space. That's all there was to it. The slick holster. Like I said, the Hellcat one has home already. If you know somebody, or if you need one for a CZ75, hit me up. Email address is down in the description. And with all that said, y'all stay safe. God bless. Leave a comment. Do you want to see more holsters? I got a bunch of them that I make. And I think The next one I do is going to be something like this for a revolver. And that's where I'm going to go with that. I may try to do a pancake holster for a revolver too. We'll have to see how that goes. But, again, y'all stay safe. God bless. Drop those comments. Thanks for watching. I do appreciate it.